Good evening. Today is May 3rd. We have some changes to our podcast that I'd like to announce. Victor is retiring from doing daily videos, and we will have him on one last time later on this week. I know I am, as well as all of our listeners, are very grateful for Victor's wisdom and contribution, and we will definitely miss it. But it is what it is. And fortunately, we have Andy Aiken joining us. And he's going to be replacing Victor on a permanent basis starting today. And we hope to continue adding value in our videos. Today was the first trading day of the month, and it has a bullish tendency. S&P 500 closed up 8 points, and after being up more than 28 points for the day. S&P 500, the futures have rejected the 4,200 level today a few times this morning at the open and sold off to close at the low of the day. The rally was basically based on the news that New Jersey, New York, and even Florida are reopening even more and removing all the COVID restrictions. And so the economic optimism is going up. Last week we had a very narrow 50-point range for S&P 500. So I think that this upcoming week, the range should expand and more volatility should be here. Nasdaq was also down for the day, around 0.5%, and also closed on the low. Gold has had a nice up day, 1.44%. But I think what everybody wants to talk today, especially, is digital gold. Bitcoin was up a little bit, but of course, the real move was in Ethereum. It was up 10% in the last 24 hours, and it was up over 30% the last week. So Ethereum continues outperforming Bitcoin dramatically, and Bitcoin now is less than 50% of all of the crypto market cap. Angie, do you have any idea? Can you tell us what's happening with Ethereum? It's going up 30% in a week. I don't know. That seems like very
Sure. Well,
exciting.
yeah. Okay. So, in my view, Bitcoin and Ethereum are there's two distinct use cases for them, and Bitcoin is more of the uh, commonly cited value of Bitcoin is as a store of value or as a digital gold, so to speak. Whereas Ethereum is the leading smart contract platform, and it's the largest by far. There are others that compete with it, but by far it's the largest. And there's a couple of developments. So I guess there's fundamental reasons, and then I think there's some kind of market trading reasons. The fundamental reasons that are driving it, and that sort of the narrative behind it, is that there's an upgrade to Ethereum that's coming in July called Berlin,
Hmm.
and that will Ethereum has been a little bit more inflationary in its issuance than Bitcoin. And this Berlin upgrade will change the way that Ethereum is issued, and it could actually make it deflationary. So that's one argument in kind of in its favor, kind of a tailwind for it. And the other is what's called Ethereum 2.0, which is the conversion of Ethereum from proof of work by Bitcoin, where it has to be mined, to being proof of stake, where you stake your Ethereum, and the staking process is what confirms the transactions rather than the proof of work process. And so the advantage of that is that drastically less power consumption and so on. You're not the the coin itself is not beholden to miners or not dependent on miners. It's dependent on stakers, and there's a lot more stakers potentially than miners. It takes a certain amount of capital to do mining and so on. So that is looks like that's going to happen, and it could happen as soon as Q4. It might be Q1 of 2022, but that's quite a bit in advance of the original time frame, which was originally discussed as that's maybe 2 3 years out. It's accelerated, so I think that's part of it. I also think that there's just in crypto, there's different market cycles that seem to not really make much sense, but there's a certain logic to them. But there's there's part the market cycle is typically that Bitcoin will that in a bull market, Bitcoin will rally, and then capital will flow out of Bitcoin into other coins, and the leading beneficiary of that is Ethereum because it's the second biggest, uh, and so Bitcoin has been sort of consolidating or treading water. It made a new high almost a month ago now. It was April 12th or 13th. And now it's Ethereum has been making new highs pretty much every day for the past week or so. So, or last several days at least, and then last week. So it's as you say, it's risen quite a bit against Bitcoin, and it's up. It's almost doubled against Bitcoin here in the last in the last several weeks, which is actually in a way, I'd say it's more typical of a late bull market rather than early in a bull market. I could be wrong about that. I'm not predicting the end of a bull market, but it's just sort of more mature market behavior than earlier in the bull market. So uh, some signs of froth. You know, there are some other things like Dogecoin and so on that they're rallying a lot, and those are that kind of froth is more indicative of late in a market cycle rather than earlier. So, so I think it's I wouldn't suggest someone outright short uh, these crypto because you can it's very easy to be wrong, and you know, shorting is not just a matter of valuation or speculative fraud, and going against that, it can go on longer than you think. But I think that it's a sign of being a little bit later in the market cycle. And so, but I think uh, there's a lot of fundamental underpinning for Ethereum rallying that didn't exist in 2017, and that's a lot of why it's at say 3,300 versus where it was in 2017. It got as high as 1,400 and something, but it after spending most of the year in the 300 to 600 range.
Right.
It's
And
been most of the year this year above 1,000, which is a very big change from where it has been the last few years.
it also broke the 3,000 round number um, and never looked back.
Right. I think breaking through 3,000 was a very big. It was the kind of constructive level. 2,000 was important, and it spent a few days above 2,000 before then pulling back and having essentially a month under 2,000. But then it did rally back above at 2,000 level, and it's pretty much rallied since then, on up through 3,000. So it's I could see it. I mean, it's already at 3,300. It's already 10% above that level, breaking through 3,000, and so I think it's you know to base the idea of these constructive levels in the market that that Vic has been really instrumental in putting that idea forward. I think it's definitely true for Ethereum and how it's rallied here.
Right. You have mentioned Dogecoin. It's almost making new all-time highs, and the volatility there is also insane. And I think you have mentioned it the day before, well, last time on your podcast when I wasn't here. Even though there is no any practical use for Dogecoin, do you see it as just the indicator of froth in the market, or is there any some practical use for Dogecoin?
Well, it's I'd say they're potentially practical use if it's accepted as payment. then it has practical use. It could be a currency that's accepted as payment for some company, but that's not very common. And it's I think the the value has been more of like sort of based on memes and but then on the other side of that is that there's a very strong community, and that's sort of the flip side of memes. That memes you can disparage them, but it's an indicator of that a community exists and that there are people that want to talk about this and joke about it and so on. And then the other thing that the meme value is that it attracts people who are um, uncomfortable with crypto or even investing or trading, and it's accessible to them. It's like low priced, and it's something funny. It's this dog, that they know, the Shibu, whatever, all these Shibu memes, and it's accessible to either young people who they just want to put $100 into crypto or something like that, and but or people that they don't take it seriously and they just want to try out crypto or something. Um, so it attracts a lot of retail money, and it is, as a result, it is, I think, very frothy. It is an indicator of froth in this market.
It's up
Uh,
17% today, and it's about probably a few minutes away from making all-time highs.
right, very close, right? Yeah. Well, you also have on the other hand, there are people like Elon Musk and so on. And I forget, there's some other celebrities like whatever, Gene Simmons, from Kiss. So some of these people that they're kind of either celebrities or well known, and they're kind of pumping it on Twitter and other places in interviews, and that yeah that tracks people. Whereas I think something like Ethereum and there's some competitors to Ethereum, like maybe you had like the Binance Smart Chain and Avalanche and Polkadot and so on. These are ones where there's a big developer community, and they're trying. Well, maybe not on Binance, but Ethereum definitely, Polkadot. There's big developer communities, and they're trying to build applications there that will be some kind of have some future value that they're and so it's a question of, but then people might be hesitant to invest in something like Ethereum because it's risen so much, and it's so far off of its low of last a year ago. But it's often in this case there's some fundamental drivers. There is some speculation going on, but there are a lot of fundamental drivers for it too. And yeah, it was as low as 90 in March of 2020 when everything else sort of bottomed out. Bitcoin got as low as 4,000, but Ethereum's now at almost 3,300, which is so more than almost 30x up from its its low of last year.
Do you know if Dogecoin has a finite supply like Bitcoin, or is it infinite? Can be created?
It's it's finite, but it doesn't have the same dynamics of Bitcoin where there's a fixed final supply. I mean, it's
Mhm.
finite today, but it's not
Okay.
technically finite. So that's in my view, it's a big strike against it that there's not the smart contract functionality on Bitcoin, but there but its value is as sort of an alternative currency or alternative store of value. So having that fixed upper limit on supply is critical, having that function. But on Dogecoin, no limit. It was just started as a fun thing by a group of people that they wanted they were sort of joking around, and it it sort of ran away without them, but it sort of is as a joke, and that's why a lot of people in crypto they might uh, buy it as a joke, but it's not going to be taken as seriously as some of the others. So.
Well, I mean, how many joke coins are there? Because I hear there are others with very peculiar names that, not necessarily even fit for TV.
Well,
So
there's
many.
there's a lot, and it depends because it in terms of starting one, it's not like say starting a company and having to have an office somewhere and so on. You could start a coin with very little effort, right? And you can create a token on a platform like Ethereum or some of these others with very little effort. But uh, the the challenge is, like, does it have some utility? Why would people hold it? Why would people want to buy it? And then on top of that, invest their time or build projects on it. So these are the things that are going to build long term value. But Dogecoin doesn't really have those kind of like a lot of development happening on it. There might be some a little bit, but there are a lot of like there are scams. I don't consider Dogecoin a scam. It's
Why
just more of
not?
a
What's the
meme.
difference between a scam and the Dogecoin?
Right.
Doge,
It's not a scam. It's just more of a meme, and it's but there are outright scams. There for example, some of the there's a platform called Polkadot, and or it's
Mhm.
dot is the symbol, and it was started by someone who was one of the founders of Ethereum, and he had some differences in how what the future of Ethereum should be, and so he started Gavin Wood. He started Polkadot, and there are a lot of launches of companies that are coming up on that, but there are people that are selling tokens as if they are Polkadot platform tokens on Ethereum, and they're coming out on the different exchanges like Uniswap and so on, like Polka this, Polka that, but 98 or 99% of them are scams. There might be two or three that are legit, but a lot of people that are just creating something with that name and trying to pass it off as being something real. So you have to do your research and check, is this, check different forums and sources to see if it really is legitimate before buying it, because those are, it may be, that it's not like you're buying it illegally or something, but it's intending to scam by misrepresenting what it really is.
Right.
It's
Well, one could argue that Dogecoin is a bit of a scam itself, considering that if you're Elon Musk, hypothetically, of course, and you're very smart and you know how to put some capital into Dogecoin in an offshore, untraceable wallet exchange, and then you tweet about it, and then you five times double, I mean, increase
right.
the value in five times, and then you sell it to the next buyer, you five times your capital, all with a couple of tweets. So hypothetically, of course. And it's
Well,
somebody
and
else, not necessarily Elon Musk, but somebody's making money there. There is a big investor in Dogecoin, from what I read, who has a large number of coins. And it's an unregulated market. So it's a free for all. Kind of reminds me of the former Soviet Union when it collapsed. There were pyramid schemes, which is what I think Dogecoin is more akin to. Pyramid schemes would promise you 20% return on your money, sometimes even 90%, depending on how badly they needed money for the investors who were leaving the scheme. And so eventually, of course, MMM is the most famous one. It eventually, of course, collapsed when people ran out of money to bring into the pyramid scheme.
yeah, and I think in like Albania there was a pyramid scheme that is something like sucked like an enormous amount. Like the most people in the country were participating in it in some way, and then when it collapsed, the people that started the pyramid scheme, they made a lot of money, but they left the country or they were already gone by then.
Right.
I think, as you say, it happened in the former Soviet Union too. But just like in former Soviet Union, right after that fell, there were sort of the rise of these oligarchs. Um, there in crypto, there is the rise of these certain oligarchs too, and I think they are the ones that are behind some of these rallies, like Dogecoin and so on. They stay in the background, and this is not conspiracy. This is actually what happened. But they'll buy up like a billion Dogecoin or something for whatever it was. Let's say a year ago they were buying it. They bought it for like $100,000 or so, and now with Dogecoin at whatever 43 cents, I think it was, yeah, 44 cents. And that's if they're able to unload that, that's $430 million that they put down 150,000 or whatever it was a year ago, and now they multiplied their money by a couple thousand
Right.
in a year's time. So that's some of what's going on. It definitely, there were people that loaded up on this, no intending to pump it down the line. And so it's kind of the greater fool theory behind what's behind Dogecoin is you're expecting there to be someone that'll pay a penny more than you for Dogecoin down the
Right.
line, and there's not really like the software development happening on it to justify that additional penny. Uh, that's where it gets a little tricky. But people see it going up, and it's like, well, I want to get in on it while it's going up, and then I'll jump off of it into something else.
Well,
And they think they're going to be smarter than the market, which it can work out, but it's not a reliable way to make money in the market. I don't think.
what also interesting is that over this weekend, Buffett and Munger chimed in on crypto, and Charlie Munger
Uh,
said that, of course, I hate the Bitcoin success. I should say modestly that I think the whole damn development is disgusting and
mm,
contrary to the interest of civilization. And I would leave the criticism to others. And Buffett kind of agreed, saying, I'm okay with that. So I find it a bit of a double standard when they're applying moral judgment to crypto while they, for example, own Coca-Cola. One could argue that Coca-Cola is
mm.
producing a lot of disease in the world. It's addictive. Children get addicted to it, and then there is diabetes as a big problem. Yet they have no problem with it. And
Sees candy also, right?
right,
They
candy,
don't sees candy.
Hershey's,
Yeah.
like whatever. Even Buffett himself said that Chevron benefited society in a lot of ways. I don't think making moral judgment. I don't like making moral judgments on
Mm.
stocks. So making moral judgments on stocks, that's not necessary. But he could make the same judgments on crypto. It's double standard.
Yeah, I saw Munger's remarks, and it's like, to me, I don't think that he's really in touch with what's going on with this. Was my take, because it was like the three things that he said were pretty much the three things that anybody who's involved in crypto has heard 100 times from whatever their uncle who thinks they know everything about investing, that type of thing. So it's like the smartest man in the room things to say about it when they don't like it. And so it's drug dealers and kidnappers or whatever are the only people buying it. It's created out of thin air, and what was it? Oh, it's a threat to civilization itself or something like that. And
Well, there is a
it's
third one that I was going to ask you about because this weekend was very active in the MSM on crypto. Bill Maher said and bashed crypto over the weekend. He said it's like Tinkerbell's light. Its power source is based solely on enough children believing in it. And unfortunately, what is real is that its growth could single handedly push global temperatures above tipping point of 2 degrees Celsius. So now there is another boogeyman with Bitcoin. It's global warming. It's causing global warming. What's your take on that? Yeah.
Well, the people that started Bitcoin, the people that were behind its initial development, it started because of the global financial crisis. It was a sense that uh, there's that the financial system is closed, controlled by a handful of big banks and the government colluding with them to always tilt things in their favor against ordinary people. When the global financial crisis happened, uh, AIG and some of these others, Goldman, so on, they got bailed out effectively. It may have been, well, things like the TARP program and so on, it was bailing them out indirectly. There were ones that actually did get bailed out directly, like an AIG. Uh, but were there ordinary people getting money to help pay their mortgages? No, it was a very tilted toward these big institutions in the system. So when we have this very large deficits and so on, now there's money that's being issued like $1,600 or something, $600 here and there, and so on that are being issued to people, but they're doing it without restraining the budget somewhere else. It's just money that's being printed out of nowhere, which means that future generations are going to have to pay for these payments that are going out now. So I think that there were people that were more, let's say, liberty minded, who didn't want to bind future generations with these type of choices. And the idea was to create a currency that had a strict limit and had a way of issuing that was based on people that participated and not based on just who's the most powerful entity that we have that's too big to fail, but rather who's actually contributing as a community member. So it very deliberately is intended to be a threat to civilization, as someone like a Dick Fuld or Charlie Munger would define it. And it's intended to be a threat to that system and that regime. Um, I'd say, as Bitcoin has grown, it may not be as hardcore on that original sort of anarcho-capitalist way of thinking, but it's still, I'd say that's still the core of the thinking around Bitcoin, is that's very deliberately trying to challenge that model, that economic model of the U.S. dollar, where people have even told me that, well, what backs the U.S. dollar? No, it's not gold anymore, but it's the U.S. military. Well, that's a great economic system. We have to, rattle our sabers, every now and then in order to reinforce the value of the dollar. It's that's so I would say on that last point, it's not out of thin air because it has to be generated through actual mining or work, which are
Right.
a mathematical problem. But in terms of being a threat to civilization, it's
Well, as far as the global warming and using the electricity,
um,
that there's this claim that Bitcoin uses a lot of electricity, and
well, I would say again, if the U.S. dollar is backed by the U.S. military, which is contributing more to global warming, the U.S. military or a handful of miners in China and in Idaho or whatever. Well, it's an issue, and down the line, it will have to be resolved. But something like Ethereum, it's converting to a proof of stake system that will be very low on power consumption, and so some of this is will be resolved over time through things like that. I don't think that Bitcoin will ever convert to that type of the proof of stake, not in the anytime in the near future. And I don't think the people want it to, so that are involved in it. So it's a very small in terms of power consumption if you look at,
right.
well, what's propping up other financial systems and so on. But I don't think it's that big an issue. The Ethereum and a lot of others are converting to something that's going to be very low in power consumption. But power isn't fixed. It's if what there are miners that claim to be 100% solar or whatever. So is that contributing to global warming? Where's the power consumption? It's coming from renewable sources and so on. So it's just one of these objections that people try to throw up to polarize people against the crypto, basically.
All right. Well, I've got nothing else for today. So if you have anything else, otherwise we'll conclude. We don't want to waste energy and contribute to global warming either.
So, well, yeah, I think that it should be really interesting what happens over the next few days. I think that we may see a slowdown in Ethereum rally, which I hold Ethereum, so I'd love to see it continue. I just don't think that any kind of rally is going to go on forever, but we could see a bit of a slowdown, and I've been expecting to see Bitcoin catch up here over the next few weeks. I don't know if that'll start tomorrow, but I think it'll start to catch up with Ethereum. But I am still quite bullish on Ethereum in the longer term. It just will. I think it'll pause in the rally a little bit.
Yep. Thank you, Andy. And
Okay.
we'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everyone.